I'll never forget the night my own cabin looked like a crime scene. Red and blue lights flashing across the lake. 4 cops with hands on their belts. And Karen, our HOA president, screaming that I was trespassing on my own property. And right beside her, their lawyers smirking like he'd already thrown me out. Yeah. That was the moment I realized the HOA wasn't just annoying anymore. They were ready for war. Act 1. The first shots fired. My name's Daniel Parker, software engineer by day, cabin owner by weekends, and apparently, public enemy number 1, according to the Lakeview HOA. That cabin isn't just a getaway spot. It's family. My dad built it with his bare hands back in the 70s, long before anyone dreamed of forming an HOA out here. For me, it's more than wood and nails. It's summers with my dad, fishing at dawn. It's the one place where life feels quiet enough to breathe. But quiet doesn't last when Karen Mitchell lives 2 doors down. Karen, queen of blinds, half open, ruler of parking complaints. The kind of neighbor who thinks HOA president means she runs her own kingdom. The first warning came one Friday evening. I was packing up my truck for the weekend, tossing a cooler in the back, when Karen waddled over with her arms crossed. "Going to the cabin again?" she asked, her voice all fake sweetness. "Yep," I said, slamming the cooler shut. She gave me a smile that never touched her eyes. "You know, the HOA's discussing new guidelines about property use. We can't have people coming and going whenever they feel like it. It makes things messy. Messy. It's my cabin." I told her that much. But the way she said, "for now," made the hairs on my neck stand up. Still, I brushed it off. That night I sat on the porch wrapped in a blanket, listening to crickets and sipping coffee. For a few hours, it felt perfect. But by morning, there was a bright yellow notice taped to the cabin door. A violation claiming I needed HOA permission to stay longer than 3 nights. I crumpled it up and threw it straight in the fire pit. That was the moment Karen declared war. Act 2. Escalation and the breaking point. I didn't even know how bad it would get. A week later, I had to stay in the city for work. By the time I came back, Karen had spun a story about me abandoning the property, breaking HOA rules, maybe even squatting. And when I pulled into the driveway that night, the place lit up with sirens. Cops everywhere. Karen pointing at me like she'd caught a burglar red-handed. And their lawyer Tom Reynolds leaning on his fancy briefcase, telling me I'd better prove I belonged here. I'll be honest, my chest tightened. For a split second, I wondered if they could actually do it. Take the cabin my dad built, throw me off my own land. But then I remembered I had the paperwork, the deed, the permits, zoning approvals, every signature, every stamp. I'd kept it all, triple copies, because my dad used to say, "If you want peace, prepare for war." So I pulled out the folder and handed it over. The lawyer flipped through it with that smug grin. And then I watched it vanish right off his face. His eyes darted from page to page, county permits, my name on the deed, renewal confirmations, everything rock solid. Karen kept yelling at the cops, "See, he doesn't belong here. Arrest him." But even the officers started looking annoyed. For a minute, I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. The harassment. Karen wasn't backing down. The next week, she called an emergency HOA meeting. I showed up to find her banging a little wooden gavel, like she was running Congress. "Mr. Parker's use of the cabin is disruptive to the community," she announced. The board members stared at me like I was hosting wild parties instead of reading books alone on the porch. Then Tom Reynolds, the lawyer, stood up. His voice was flat, exhausted. "I've reviewed all of Mr. Parker's documents. He's in full compliance with every applicable law." Whispers rippled through the room. One neighbor even clapped. Karen's jaw locked, but she wasn't done. 2 days later, I woke up to the buzz of a drone outside my window. A drone with the HOA logo on the side, filming me on my own property. I recorded it and posted the video online. And man, did it blow up. Thousands of views, comments rolling in, people from all over the country sharing their own HOA horror stories. Some called me a hero, others told me to lawyer up. For the first time, I didn't feel alone. The breaking point. But it wore me down. The constant fights, the threats, the paranoia every time I heard a car door slam. One night, sitting alone in the cabin with my phone buzzing non-stop, I actually thought, maybe it isn't worth it. Maybe I should just sell the place. Let them win. I hated myself for even thinking it. That's when I got a call from my sister, Sarah. She said, "Dad didn't build that cabin for you to walk away. You keep those papers clean. You keep your ground. You don't let bullies erase family." Her words hit me harder than I expected. And just like that, the doubt cracked, and something solid slid back into place. I decided if they wanted a fight, I'd give them one, the all-out attack. 2 mornings later, my driveway cameras pinged. When I checked the feed, my stomach dropped. Karen was there with 3 hired men. One carried a roll of orange fencing, another had a heavy chain, and the third bolt cutters gleaming in his hands. They weren't just spying now. They were about to blockade my driveway, chain my trees together, and cut their way in. I tore down the path in my truck, gravel spitting behind me. When I skidded to a stop, Karen actually smiled. "You're in violation, Mr. Parker. We're closing access until the board completes its review." I stepped out, voice steady. "You touch those trees. You're trespassing. That chain hits my land. You're committing a crime." She tilted her head, smug as ever. "Call whoever you like." I already did. And right then, a tow truck rolled up. Driver, pointing toward the lake. "Got a call for a boat removal." "That yours?" My dad's old fishing boat, the one he'd built with his own hands, was tied at my dock. The same boat I'd grown up in. "You touched that boat," I said, "and you're stealing." Sirens wailed in the distance, Officer Miller's cruiser racing down the lane. The workers hesitated. Even the driver looked uneasy. And then my phone buzzed with another alert. The dock cam. A figure in a hoodie. Gasoline bottle in one hand, rag stuffed in the motor, flame. I sprinted down the path, lungs burning, just in time to see Miller's deputy douse the fire with an extinguisher. The figure struggled in Miller's grip until the hood came off. It was Ryan, Karen's son. "Just a scare," he muttered. "You embarrassed Mom online." I'll never forget the way Karen screamed his name when she saw the cuffs lock around his wrists. Her whole empire cracked in that 1 second. Act 3. Justice on the table. By the time the HOA dragged me into a mandatory hearing, I was ready. They lined up at a long table, accusing me of hostile conduct and damaging the community's reputation. I almost laughed. Then my lawyer, Ms. Alvarez, walked in with a binder thick enough to choke a horse. She slammed it on the table. "First, this HOA has no authority to restrict access to private property beyond county-approved bylaws. Second, the attempt to blockade my client's driveway constitutes trespassing and harassment. Third, the attempted arson by the HOA president's son elevates this to criminal court jurisdiction." You could have heard a pin drop. Karen's face went white. George, the vice president, fumbled his tie. Neighbors whispered, even Tom Reynolds. The HOA lawyer looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. The board had nothing left. No bylaws, no fake rules, no excuses. For the first time in weeks, I stood tall and said, "I don't care about your fines. I don't care about your titles. What I care about is my father's land. And you're not taking it." The silence that followed was heavier than any gavel. And just like that, the empire of the HOA queen collapsed. Closing line. Bullies win until somebody plants their feet and says, "Enough."